God is love, and the one who loves in God lives in God, and God lives in him. God is love, and the one who lives in love lives in God, and God lives in him. My dear brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus, yesterday we heard about the conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus. And today we hear the same episode of conversation between Jesus and Nicodemus. However, some scholars would suggest that it is not the voice of Jesus, it is the disciple or the beloved apostle who spoke to Nicodemus. But whatever, in this gospel, there is a declaration that is said, God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that all those who believe in him may not perish but have life eternal. This short declaration brings us four truths. The first one is, God is love. John, the apostle, in his first letter he writes, God is love. The very essence of God is love. If you remove love from God, God cannot exist. Therefore, God is equivalent to love. And God loved something. And the object of love is the world. And that's what we hear. God so loved the world. He loved the world. That's why in the book of Genesis we hear, God saw whatever he created and found it was good. And therefore, God loved the world. As the artist leaves some trace in his art, that those who look at the art can find out, can refer back to the artist because of some particular trace. Likewise, God created in the world the human beings in his image and likeness, that those who look at human beings can trace back to God, the author of the creation of this human being. And therefore, God has created human beings in his image and likeness of God. And third one is that he gave his only Son, because he loved the world so much that he gave himself completely, kenosis, self-emptying. Love is that giving oneself totally. And that's what Jesus said, there is no greater love than giving oneself to his friends. And that's why God gave himself completely in the form of his Son, Jesus Christ. And Jesus himself offered himself on the cross for all of us, stretching out his hands on the cross, that he loved each one of us unconditionally. And the fourth one is that he gave himself so that we may not perish but have life eternal. The purpose of self-emptying, the kenosis, is that we human beings may not perish but have salvation in him. But there is a big question that arises now. When there is so much of goodness, when there is so much of love in God, why there is so much of suffering in human beings? Who is the cause for all this suffering? When something happens in our life, we immediately blame God, saying, Lord, why have you given this to me? Lord, why this burden to me? Why this suffering to me? My dear friends, God does not impose suffering on human being, because God is always good, because God is always loving. Then where does this suffering come from? And that's what we hear in the later part. The light came into the world, but people preferred the darkness, not the light. It is we who prefer the darkness instead of choosing the light, because of our brokenness, because of our limitedness. We prefer the darkness, we prefer the sinful life, not the righteous life. And that is what the Lord is telling us today. He is inviting us to participate partake in His love. When God creates us, He doesn't impose His love on us. Rather, He gives us the choice to respond to His love, either to accept or to reject. But we, because of our limitedness, we always choose the sinful part. And my dear friends, today the Lord is inviting us to respond to His love, to respond to His invitation of love and participate in His love so that we may have the life eternal. During this Eucharistic celebration, let us ask for that grace. Lord, give me the heart so that I may always respond to your love in a positive way. Amen.